What's going on, YouTube? It's your girl Vanity V. Happy Thursday. Hope you guys are doing well, having a good week. Really quickly, your girl's struggling. I've been a little under the weather, but I really wanted to talk to y'all about this today, okay? So we're gonna try to get through this video. We're gonna jump right into it. Let's talk about Camron, Mase, Joe Budden Podcast, Melyssa Ford. Let's get into all of the things. Let's just break this all down. I want to kind of break it down from a woman's perspective, you guys. I want to give you my opinion on all of this. And I'm going to be very, very objective because I like everybody involved. I love Camron. I love Mase, Joe Budden. I also enjoy, Melyssa Ford, Ice, Queen Flip, everybody, right? So, but I do have my opinions on this situation. And we're going to talk about it. Let's get into it. Let's start from last Saturday, which is when this all started. You guys know I'm a big Joe Budden Podcast fan. Been listening since the beginning. Marissa Mendez was on there, Rory and Joe. That was in like 2016. So I have been listening from the beginning. Joe Budden Podcast drops Saturdays and Wednesdays. So last Saturday, an episode dropped. They're getting into all of the things, right? And then the subject comes up where Melyssa brings it up, where she talks about banter that took place on Mase and Camron's podcast, okay? Now, Mase and Camron, I really enjoy them. I can't really watch their podcast, y'all, and the only reason is because I'm not into sports like that, and it's a sports podcast. However, I do like them, so I dip in and out and listen. And so Melyssa talked about a portion of the podcast where they kind of deviated from talking about sports, where they, Mase and Camron, they are both from Harlem. They, today, Camron did a little live, y'all, about an hour ago. I watched it in its entirety. We'll get into that. But today, Cam said he's known Mase since he was like 11 years old. So they go way back. Obviously, with that being said, they have lots of stories of the bad boy days, Dipset, all of the things. And sometimes on their podcast, they, admittedly, Cam said sometimes we deviate from sports and we talk about the experiences that we had. And so they talked about an instance when apparently, according to Camron, Mase and him were 15, 16, where they went to I don't want to use the W word, but kind of like a brothel or something of that sort where women are giving out services, right? So they went to that type of a house or establishment. And apparently they ran a train on a woman. So, they're talking about their experience, how that went, da-da-da-da-da. And if you know Cam and Mase, they're hilarious. So, they're making light of it. But Melyssa brings it to the Joe Budden podcast last Saturday. And she's basically saying, look, it was in poor taste, considering everything that's going on with Puffy and, everything. There's all these charges. We know what's going on in the media and in the entertainment world right now. It's a little sensitive. There are lots of people that are coming out of the woodworks that are alleging things of abuse, this, that, etc., right? And so Melyssa's like, it was in poor taste, da-da-da-da-da. And so, the guys are just like, it's a poor taste, but we think it's funny or whatever. And so then Melyssa says something along the lines of, and we don't even really know if that is the true story or whatever. So then Joe says, yeah, we know Cam and Mase told the story. So yeah, we know the story from them. Then this is where Melyssa went wrong, y'all. And this is where the basis of this conversation. After that, because you could tell through the podcast, the men, the fellas were visibly like, oh God, where is this going, right? So after that, Melyssa fixes her mouth to say, because I listened to this in real time last Saturday. And the whole time I'm like, Melyssa, I don't know where you're going with this. I get if you feel it's in poor taste, that's one thing. But then she jumps out on the ledge, all the way out. And she's like, yeah, and you guys, do you guys think possibly there probably was some underage girls there? So the guys are like, oh my God, Melyssa, no, what are you saying? This is disgusting. Why are you doing this? Absolutely not. stop, we're not doing this. Melyssa, you're wrong, you're wrong, you're wrong. They did get at her in that moment, right? But the problem, Melyssa, is number one, that was a reach. I promise, in that moment when I was listening to it, I was like, oh, I don't know as much about Mase's personality as Camron, but I was like scared for her. That I literally was like, oh, Camron's going to fry you. Because we already know Cam, he's a little bit of 50 Cent-ish. Not a little bit, a lot of bit. Like, if you say something to him, he's not as much of a troublemaker as 50 Cent. Well, he's really not a troublemaker. Cam seems like, don't start none, won't be none, right? But we know sometimes Cam can take it a little too far if you start with him first. And when she said that, I just, like, in that moment, I was like, like, I was sad for her in that moment because I'm like, oh my God, like, when he hears this, this is going to be really bad for Melyssa. And so the implication of that, we know what the implication of that. If you're sleeping with underage girls, that's essentially the R word. You know what I'm saying? So that's a very, very, very dangerous thing to even imply about someone, period. You know, because once you start implying things, people lose endorsements, people lose their jobs. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's nothing to play around, especially with black men. So, you know, Cam and Mase respond very eloquently, in my opinion. You know, they go on their podcast. I believe theirs airs Monday, if I'm not mistaken, and they said something. They gave her grace in that moment, right? And they were just like, look, we don't do illegal stuff. Like, don't come for us. Leave us alone. Like, don't do this. This ain't what you want. Which is what I was thinking of, because I was like, I would never come for Camron specifically. I'm not coming for nobody, but like, you don't want no problems with Camron, right? So, but they, in their response to her, I mean, he took some digs and he was like, yeah, you know, I got ice on speed dial. You know, you're basically implying she's an illegal, you know, alien. Like, don't play with me. I'll get you shipped back off to Canada, whatever, right? I mean, he took some digs, but considering what she said, it was very like, okay. So then yesterday on the podcast, because again, Joe Budden airs Saturdays and Wednesdays, right? So yesterday, like maybe 20 minutes in, Ice asked Melyssa, you know, Joe, you know, he always like, where are we starting? What are we starting with today? And Ice is like, right off the rip, Melyssa, do you think that you owe Cam and Mase an apology? And so this is where she went wrong. I didn't like this. She was like, I mean, for what? At first, right? And I'm like, girl, you know what you said last Saturday? You know what you said. Like, and we're going to get to Cam's response, but I think the way she went about the apology probably made him upset, because it's almost, they had to almost pull the apology out. You know what I'm saying? It wasn't like, because if it had been me, I would have immediately been like, oh, I would have asked Joe not, I would have like, take it out. I don't even want it in there, but I would have immediately apologized. Like, nobody would have had to ask me to do that. But it was like they had to like get it out of her, you know, and at first she's like, well, I haven't really been on the internet this weekend, so I don't really know. And then they're like, come on. And, you know, Queen's Flip, he's like, you know, Melyssa, like, stop playing. And then, you know, they play the response from Camron and Mase. And then they're like, you know, what do you have to say about that? And so she apologizes, right? And, you know, Joe was basically like, look, I told, you know, I asked you, like, do you want to keep this in here? Because they're going to kill you, which is what I was thinking when it aired. I was like, oh, this is a bad idea. Like, no. And he said she doubled down on it, which, again, that probably made Cam and Mase feel away, right? Long story short, she apologized yesterday on the Joe Budden podcast. You know, the fellas, you know, were like, okay, we're glad you apologized, whatever. Initially yesterday, I was like, okay, she apologized. Like, you know, considering that Cam and Mase in their response kind of took it easy on her, you know, bygones be bygones. It's, you know, she apologized, they'll let it go. But no, that's not how it happened. Yesterday, Camron, that apology pissed him off. And incited him and made him even more upset. And I think it's because of some of the things that I was saying, like the way she apologized, for him probably hearing that she doubled down on it when Joe tried to give her an out. They had to pull the apology out of her, you know what I'm saying? And so he, put a post up of her. It was like, he would call on her B words and stuff in the post. This was on Instagram. And he was just like, okay, like he was mad, obviously, in the post. I'm not gonna say all the things. Go look at the post. Or maybe Instagram might have taken it down by now. I don't know. But so yeah, he posted something on Instagram. It was a picture that he took with her back in the day. He was like, yeah, and in this picture, I told you not to touch me, because they were kind of in the picture like this. I was like, normally you take a picture with a gentleman, you guys kind of have, not even if it's romantic, but your hand around each other, so, whatever. They need, they were both kind of in the picture like this. And he was frying her and dyeing her in his, caption, right? And so then after that, again, this is all yesterday, Melyssa puts up some stupid posts, which, you know how people like put posts up like unbothered type of thing, but you're bothered. Because if you weren't bothered, you wouldn't have never put a post up in response to him, right? So obviously, if you don't watch or listen to Joe Budden or, Camron and Mase, you're going to be confused, right? So people were in the comments like, what is going on? Like, what the heck? You know what I'm saying? And so fast forward to today, Thursday, Camron, and this was literally all this happened about 2 or 3 hours ago. Apparently people were reporting his post because remember he was calling it a B word and cursing and saying, I'm gonna report, I got ice on speed dial, whatever. People reported him for harassment, and his live, he doesn't have the ability to go live on his page for 2 days. So then he says, we're gonna go live on the It Is What It Is podcast Instagram page, and I want to explain to you guys what is going on and why I feel a way about this. So he went live on his podcast Instagram's live, and he, first of all, it started out with like a Tupac diss song in the background. I'm like, oh God, this is just not gonna go well, right? I'm like, child. So, he's on the live, he's smoking, whatever. He gets started finally, and he kind of breaks down everything. First of all, condolences to his mother. I did not know his mother passed away, and I'm a Camron fan, and I missed that, apparently, in all the Shade Room mess. But he was just talking about the inception of his, sports podcast, and he was also talking about how he started the podcast like in November of 2022. He did some episodes. His mom got cancer and got sick at the top of this year, and then he took a couple months off to care for her. She unfortunately passed away. And then I remember when Joe did an interview on Drink Champs with Nori, and like they took shots kind of at him, saying like everybody's popping up with a podcast. Then later they said they weren't talking about him, which they was talking about him, whatever. So he was just talking about the beginning of his podcast, how Mase ended up on it, right? And so then he was just basically saying, like, I always wanted to do a podcast about sports, just from a perspective of someone who is a sports lover. And, Mase came on the show, we had chemistry, we decided to partner up, and now they have this very successful podcast. Then he talks about the fact that, I only talk about sports in my podcast. I don't even talk about this commentary mess that y'all talking about. So y'all jumping out there, messing with me, and starting stuff with me, like, why are you doing that? So then he just talks about, he's kind of venting, and it's sad because I feel like Camron actually, like, this probably hurt him, because he's like, damn, like, I'm trying to uplift people, I'm trying to do my thing, I'm minding my whole entire black ass business, and here y'all come, jumping out the window. Allegedly Joe and Noriega had that weirdness where they were trying to come for him at the beginning of the year, and then here we go now, I'm minding my business with Mase, and here comes Melyssa Ford accusing us of potentially doing some egregious stuff with underage girls. And he was just like, look, we were underage, which I didn't know, until today. He was like, we were 16, you know what I'm saying? We were in a situation where, we've known each other forever. We've been in the streets, whatever. And we were just talking about our experiences. We've never done anything illegal. We've never forced anybody to do anything. We've definitely never done stuff with underage women. And so he was just like, for you to put that on me, the type of ramifications that I could face as a man, specifically as a black man, like, you know better. And he was like, you don't get to just apologize and like sweep it under the rug like it didn't happen. That's not cool. And he was like, basically like, I really was going to leave it alone. But again, her apology yesterday, for whatever reason, got under his skin. And so then he starts talking about, I missed this today, but I guess Queen's Flip, which I like Queen's Flip. He was caping in some form or fashion for Melyssa, like who's gonna protect her or whatever. And Cam was like, wait a minute, you supposed to be my man. Like, I put you on, I helped you in the beginning stages of, your YouTube page and tried to help you with skits and try to put you on game and help you to, how to get sponsors and stuff. And he was like, I did all of that for you. And then for you, knowing what she said, for you to come out here and like take up for her as if she wasn't the person who was in the wrong. He was like, really, that's what we doing? And then he also said this, I will agree with Camron on this. Joe, you should have never aired this. You shouldn't have. I know you said, Joe, on your podcast yesterday that you asked Melyssa, like, are you sure that you don't want to take this out? But the same way, Joe, you took all that Diddy shit out of there, you was quick to take all that Diddy stuff out. You should not have left this in there, Joe. And I love Joe Budden, but you were wrong for that. This is your podcast. You make executive decisions all the time. The guys, they always talk about it, how you make decisions when all of that stuff happened with Drake. You put it on Patreon, didn't tell nobody. You make executive decisions all the time. You should not have allowed that verbiage to be in your podcast. You should have taken that out, because that's dangerous. You don't do that. What she said was disgusting and it's dangerous. And again, I like Melyssa too, but Melyssa, you were dead wrong. And Joe, you were dead wrong too. And I'm surprised that Camron didn't really get at you, because he should have, because you're almost as equally to blame as Melyssa, like, for real. Again, if the same way you had the wherewithal to take all of that stuff from Puffy out a couple weeks ago, you should have done the same thing here, because you shouldn't even have let that be in the airwaves. Because Joe, if that would have been the case with you, and you know what's crazy? I think Camron and Mase would have never allowed something like that to be said on their podcast and let it air. So that was real whack, Joe, that you did that. So yeah, Mase mentioned that, or excuse me, Camron mentioned that as well. He didn't even really get at Joe. He threw, subliminals and this and that. But I will just say this, because I after listening to Camron today, I have a different perspective on it. Because yesterday when he posted that post, I was like, oh, Camron, like, what, you got to call her out of her name? She apologized. But when I really think about this and with how he really broke things down, I agree with him. Again, this is hopefully a life lesson for Melyssa. Like, Melyssa, you cannot do stuff like this. This was very Karen-esque, okay? I know you're half white. I'm just saying. I'm just going to leave that at that. But this was a Karen move. I don't like this, Melyssa. And you have a responsibility to do better than this. I think that Camron and Mase are well within their right to feel the way that they feel. And even with the things that Camron said today, I still think he didn't go in on you like he really could have. Like, he really could have, because he probably knows a lot about you, Melyssa. You're not an angel, I'm sure. I mean, he did say some stuff about you in Ice-T, which, that was interesting. Nonetheless, he really could have fried you up, Melyssa, and he didn't do that. And you just have to do better. It's disgusting what you did. And Joe Budden, you got to do better too, because you should have never allowed this to we shouldn't even know that this even happened, because we never should have heard it. Just the same way you did with Diddy, even though that stuff ended up leaking anyway. But like, you should have removed this, because you do this all the time, Joe. You didn't, for God's sake, you did a whole interview with Taj K. You didn't put that out. Like, so you can make your executive decisions. You know that this wasn't cool. Camron also, he was hinting at possibly suing y'all for defamation. He was saying, he don't want to be, no punk. but he said he might have to be a punk. That's what Camron said. So I don't know. I think that the podcast is going to be very interesting on Saturday. I'm certain, you know, they usually record on Fridays. I'm certain that they're going to talk about this. And I cannot wait to hear the perspective. Well, I'm sure Queen's Flip is going to have a lot to say because Camron dedicated like 5 to 10 minutes talking about how Queen's Flip disappointed him. So I definitely want to hear, you know, what they have to say about that. And I think there's some more apologies that need to go around. I think, Melyssa, don't say nothing else. Stop subbing Cam because you've been subbing him all day. Stop. You was wrong. Like, if it was me, I would be like, can I get Camron's phone number? Even though Camron may not talk to you. But I would try to get Camron and Mase on a 3-way. And I would say, I would like to take you out to dinner. And I would sincerely apologize to them. That just let it go, Melyssa. Like, you were so dead wrong. And there's no excuse. And just let them be petty if they want. But stop subbing them because you were wrong. Joe Budden, y'all need to apologize too because you never should have allowed this to air on your show. So, it's getting juicy, but we know it's not going to be over because Joe and them are going to say something for the episode this upcoming Saturday. I just hope that they do the right thing. I hope that they, you know, even though he was very shady to y'all, you know, I would not take offense to that because y'all were wrong. You really were. I mean, Ice and what's his face, you know, caught some strays because he definitely said Joe probably don't really be paying y'all. But that's neither here nor there. I mean, I just want to see what the podcast is going to say. But anyway, let me know. If y'all are up to date on everything. What are y'all's thoughts? Do you agree with Melyssa? Do you think she was wrong? How do you guys feel about how Camron and Mase are handling this? What are your thoughts? Drop down in my comments. Let me know, you guys. And of course, as always, please like, subscribe, and share. Okay? I'll talk to y'all soon. Bye-bye.